Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the Wanderer, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the viewscreen flicker with static. The small reconnaissance vessel hummed around him, its aging systems struggling to maintain optimal performance. At just 60 meters in length, the Wanderer was dwarfed by even the most modest ships in the human fleet. But it was all Earth could spare for this mission. The mission was simple in theory. Investigate the unmapped sector beyond the Helix Nebula, gather data, and return home. No combat, no heroics, just routine reconnaissance. Earth needed information about the outer territories, and the Wanderer, despite its size and age, was equipped with some of the best sensor arrays humanity had ever developed. Daniel adjusted his uniform collar and glanced at his small crew. Lieutenant Corinne Foster sat at the navigation console, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. She was young, barely 25, but sharp as a plasma cutter. Beside her, Chief Engineer Paul Gregory monitored the power distribution systems, his weathered face creased with concentration. And then there was Dr. Lisa Martinez, their science officer, hunched over her station analyzing stellar phenomena with the intensity of someone who had forgotten the rest of the universe existed. The four of them were all Earth could spare, all Earth could risk sending into the unknown. Everything changed when the sensor alarms began to wail. Corinne's voice cut through the alarm. Something massive just dropped out of hyperspace. Distance, 500,000 kilometers. Make that 3 contacts. No, 5. Captain, we have incoming vessels. Daniel moved to her station, his heart rate accelerating. The display showed 5 enormous signatures, each one easily 10 times the size of the Wanderer. Their configuration was unlike anything in Earth's databases. Alien vessels. Humanity had known for decades that they weren't alone in the galaxy, but actual contact had been limited to brief, tense encounters with automated probes and a few cryptic transmissions. This was different. These were warships, and they were moving directly toward the Wanderer with purpose. Open all channels, Daniel ordered. Let them know we mean no harm. We're here for peaceful exploration. Corinne complied, broadcasting on every frequency they had. The response came within seconds, but it wasn't what any of them expected. Laughter. Deep, rumbling laughter that echoed through the communication system with such force that Lisa flinched. The viewscreen flickered and resolved into an image. The face that appeared was humanoid in the loosest sense. Scaled skin the color of burnished copper, eyes like molten gold with vertical pupils, and a mouth filled with teeth that seemed designed for tearing rather than talking. The alien's laughter subsided into what might have been a smirk. Humans, the alien spoke, its voice a guttural growl that the translation software struggled to process. Your species sends this pathetic little craft into our territory and expects mercy. How amusing. Behind the speaker, Daniel could see others of the same species, their golden eyes fixed on the viewscreen with expressions that ranged from amusement to outright contempt. The alien leaned closer, filling the screen. I am Commander Vexther of the Crethian Dominion. Your pitiful vessel has violated our space. By law, you should be destroyed immediately. But I think we shall have some entertainment first. Tell me, human captain, do you understand how insignificant you are? Daniel kept his voice steady, though his pulse hammered in his ears. Commander Vexther, we were unaware this sector was claimed. Our charts showed this region as unexplored. We'll leave immediately if you allow us safe passage. More laughter erupted from the Crethian bridge. Vexther's eyes gleamed with malicious delight. Safe passage. The human asks for safe passage. Look at your ship, Captain. Look at my fleet. You command a vessel that would barely serve as a lifeboat for one of my cruisers, and you negotiate as if you have leverage. The 4 other Crethian vessels moved into formation around the Wanderer, their massive hulls casting shadows across the reconnaissance ship's hull. Each warship bristled with weapon batteries, shield generators, and armor plating that made Earth's best defensive technology look primitive. Paul's voice was barely a whisper. Captain, their smallest destroyer has more firepower than our entire fleet combined. This isn't a fight we can win. Daniel didn't need the reminder. The tactical display made their situation brutally clear, but giving up without trying wasn't in his nature. "Commander, we don't want conflict. Our species has no quarrel with the Krethian Dominion." Vexther's amusement seemed to intensify. "No quarrel. You barely qualify as a species worth noticing. Your homeworld is barely past the threshold of spacefaring civilization. Your technology is laughable, and you dare enter our space with this toy of a ship." The commander gestured dismissively at someone off-screen. "Show them what real power looks like." One of the Krethian cruisers rotated slowly, presenting its broadside to the Wanderer. Energy began to build along its weapons array, a sickly green light that pulsed with barely contained power. Then it fired, not at the human ship but at a nearby asteroid, little more than a chunk of rock 30 meters in diameter. The beam struck with such intensity that the viewscreen automatically dimmed to protect their eyes. When it cleared, the asteroid was gone. Not broken, not shattered, but completely vaporized, reduced to atoms scattered across the void. "That was merely a demonstration at reduced power," Vexther continued. "One of my ships could reduce your pathetic craft to its component molecules without even straining our reactors. So tell me, human captain, why should I not do exactly that? Give me one reason to let you live." The bridge of the Wanderer fell silent except for the steady hum of the life support systems. Karen's hands hovered over her console, frozen. Paul had stopped monitoring his systems entirely, his attention locked on the viewscreen. Even Lisa had abandoned her research, her face pale. Daniel took a slow breath. His mind raced through options, scenarios, possibilities. They couldn't fight, they couldn't flee. The Krethian ships were faster, more powerful, and had them completely surrounded. Diplomatic negotiations seemed pointless when the other party viewed them as insects, but he had to try something. "Commander," he began carefully, "I understand your position. You have overwhelming force. You could destroy us without effort, but consider what message that sends. We came here in peace, seeking only knowledge. If you destroy us without provocation, Earth will know. And humanity, despite our limitations, does not forget those who kill our own." Vexther's laughter was even louder this time, echoed by his crew. "Oh, the human threatens us now. What will your primitive world do, Captain? Send more tiny ships? Please enlighten me. What could your species possibly do to the Krethian Dominion?" Daniel felt something shift inside him. Not fear anymore, but anger. Cold, focused anger at being mocked, at being treated as worthless. His hand moved to his console, fingers brushing over the controls he had hoped never to use. "Commander," he said quietly, "you assume we're defenseless because our ship is small. You assume our technology is primitive because we're young. But there's something you should understand about humanity. We've learned that size isn't everything." The Krethian commander's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something that might have been curiosity. "Enlighten me, human. What could your toy ship possibly possess that would concern me?" Daniel's fingers moved across his console, activating systems that had been dormant since the Wanderer launched. Deep in the ship's core, something woke up. Something that Earth's military had installed as a last resort, a weapon so experimental that most of the crew didn't even know it existed. Paul noticed first. "Captain, we have massive power fluctuations in the primary core. What are you doing?" Daniel ignored him, his attention fixed on Vexther. "Commander, humanity spent the last 30 years studying every scrap of alien technology we could find. Every probe, every transmission, every piece of debris from ancient civilizations. We learned that most spacefaring species follow similar paths. Bigger ships, stronger shields, more firepower. It's logical, it's practical, it works." Vexther's amusement was beginning to wane. "Get to your point, human." Daniel allowed himself a small smile, but humanity took a different approach. "We realized we couldn't compete with established powers in traditional warfare, so we focused on something else entirely, something no one expected from a species as young as ours." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "We weaponized physics itself." The Krethian commander's eyes narrowed. "What nonsense is this?" The Wanderer shuddered as power diverted from every non-essential system. Life support dropped to minimum. Engines went dark. Even the lights dimmed to emergency levels. All that energy, every watt of power the small ship could generate, flowed into a single device housed in the center of the vessel. "The Nova Lance," Daniel said quietly. "That's what our scientists called it. It took 3 decades to develop, cost more than an entire fleet of conventional warships, and nearly destroyed Earth's economy. But it works. And Commander Vexler, you're about to become the first being in this sector to witness what happens when you mock humanity. Vexler's expression changed. The amusement vanished, replaced by something else. Uncertainty, fear. Daniel couldn't tell and didn't care. The Krethian commander barked orders at his crew, and the alien warships began to power up their shields and weapons. Too late. The Nova Lance fired. There was no visible beam, no dramatic light show. One moment, the Krethian flagship was there, its massive hull surrounded by shields that could withstand a sustained bombardment from a dozen conventional warships. The next moment, a point of absolute darkness appeared directly in front of the ship's bridge. The singularity was microscopic, barely large enough to be measured, but it didn't need to be large. It was a controlled tear in spacetime itself, a miniature black hole that existed for precisely 1.7 seconds before collapsing back into quantum foam. In that 1.7 seconds, the singularity's gravity well didn't care about shields. It didn't care about armor. It didn't care about anything except the fundamental forces of the universe. The Krethian flagship's forward section simply ceased to exist, pulled atom by atom into the gravitational maw before the singularity winked out of existence. The silence on the Wanderer's bridge was absolute. Karen's mouth hung open. Paul had gone completely pale. Lisa stared at the viewscreen with eyes as wide as saucers. The Krethian flagship drifted, its forward third simply gone, exposing decks and corridors to the vacuum of space. Secondary explosions rippled through the damaged vessel as atmosphere vented and power systems failed. The other 4 warships hung motionless in space, their crews undoubtedly stunned by what they had just witnessed. Daniel's voice was steady as he addressed the remaining ships. "This is Captain Daniel Hayes of the human vessel Wanderer. Commander Vexler is no longer in command. I'm now speaking to whoever has assumed control of his fleet. You have one chance. Leave this sector immediately. Do not engage us. Do not follow us. And when you return to your dominion, you will deliver a message." He waited, watching the sensor displays. The 4 intact Krethian ships remained frozen, their weapon systems charging but not firing. Whoever was in command over there was weighing options, calculating odds, trying to process what had just happened. "Tell your leaders," Daniel continued, "that humanity will not be mocked. We will not be threatened. We may be young, we may have small ships, we may lack your numbers and your experience, but we have something you clearly underestimated. We have the will to survive and the ingenuity to make even our greatest disadvantages into weapons." A new voice crackled over the communication channel. This one was female, still Krethian, but with none of Vexler's arrogance. "This is Acting Commander Lethara. Human Captain, we acknowledge your demonstration. We will withdraw as you demand. But this incident will be reported. The Dominion will respond." Daniel nodded slowly. "I expect nothing less. But when they do respond, make sure they understand one thing. We didn't fire first. We didn't seek this conflict. Your commander threatened us, mocked us, and prepared to destroy us for the crime of entering what we thought was unclaimed space. We defended ourselves. Nothing more, nothing less." There was a long pause. Then Lethara spoke again, her voice carrying a note of what might have been respect. "Understood, Captain. We are withdrawing, but I would advise you to do the same. This sector is no longer safe for humans." The Krethian ships began to move, forming up around their damaged flagship. Tractor beams locked onto the crippled vessel, and the entire group began a slow retreat. Within minutes, they had vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Wanderer alone in the void. Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. His hands were shaking, he realized. The adrenaline that had kept him focused was beginning to fade, replaced by the realization of what had just happened. He had just started an interstellar incident that could lead to war. He had used a weapon that existed only in theory until today. He had killed aliens, possibly dozens of them. Captain Karen's voice was soft but steady. "What just happened? What was that weapon? I've never even heard of a Nova Lance." Daniel turned to face his crew. They deserved answers. The Nova Lance is a singularity projector. It creates a miniature black hole at a designated target point and maintains it for less than 2 seconds before letting it collapse. The power requirements are enormous, which is why we had to shut down everything else. And the risk of using it near a planetary body would be catastrophic. But in open space, against a target that relies on conventional defenses, it's essentially unstoppable. Paul looked like he might be sick. We carried a black hole generator this entire time and nobody told us. Daniel nodded grimly. It was classified. High Command decided that only reconnaissance vessels would be equipped with it, vessels that might encounter unknown threats far from support. The theory was that we'd never need to use it, that just having it would be enough deterrent once word spread. He gestured at the view screen. I think we just proved that theory wrong. Lisa finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. Did we just start a war? The question hung in the air. Daniel wanted to say no, wanted to reassure them that everything would be fine. But he couldn't lie to them, not after what they had just been through together. I don't know, maybe. The Krethians might see this as an act of aggression, or they might see it as exactly what it was, self-defense against overwhelming force. Either way, Earth needs to know what happened here. He moved back to his command chair and began inputting commands. Karen, plot a course back to Earth. Maximum speed. Paul, I need you to get our long-range transmitter operational. We need to send a detailed report ahead of us. Lisa, compile every scrap of data we gathered on those Krethian ships. Their technology, their tactics, everything. If this does turn into a conflict, Earth needs every advantage we can give them. The crew moved to comply, their training overriding their shock. Daniel watched them work, feeling a surge of pride. They had faced an impossible situation and survived. They had been mocked, threatened, and dismissed as insignificant, and they had proven every assumption wrong. As the Wanderer's engines came back online and the small ship began its journey home, Daniel couldn't shake the image of Vexther's face in those final moments. The Krethian commander had learned the hard way what it meant to underestimate humanity. Whether that lesson would lead to peace or war remained to be seen. But one thing was certain now. The galaxy knew that humanity was no longer just another primitive species stumbling into the cosmic arena. They were players now, dangerous ones, with weapons that defied conventional understanding, and the will to use them when pushed. The Wanderer disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind only the debris field of the Krethian flagship as proof that the encounter had ever happened. And in the void, that debris would remain for years, a silent monument to the folly of mocking a small human ship. 6 weeks later, the Wanderer emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Earth's defense grid immediately locked onto them, weapons charging until the recognition codes were verified. Then the comm channels exploded with activity. Wanderer, this is Fleet Command. We received your transmission. You are cleared for immediate docking at Luna Station. A full delegation is waiting to debrief you. Stand by for escort. 4 destroyers materialized around the small reconnaissance ship, their sleek hulls a stark contrast to the Wanderer's utilitarian design. Daniel couldn't help but notice that even Earth's destroyers were larger than his ship. But size didn't matter anymore. The last 6 weeks had proven that beyond any doubt. The trip to Luna Station took 3 hours. During that time, Daniel composed himself, reviewed his reports, and prepared for what was certain to be an intense interrogation. Using the Nova Lance without explicit authorization was a court-martial offense under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. Luna Station loomed ahead, a massive ring of metal and composite materials that housed the headquarters of Earth's United Defense Force. The Wanderer docked smoothly, and within minutes, Daniel and his crew were ushered into a conference room filled with the highest-ranking officers in the fleet. Admiral Richard Stone sat at the head of the table, his weathered face impossible to read. Flanking him were representatives from every branch of Earth's military, intelligence services, and diplomatic corps. The weight of their collective attention was almost physical. Captain Hayes, Admiral Stone began, his voice gravelly with age and authority. You've created quite a situation. In the 6 weeks since your transmission arrived, we've detected increased military activity across 3 sectors. The Krethian Dominion has mobilized its fleet. Several neutral powers have closed their borders, and every intelligence agency on Earth is trying to predict whether we're about to face an invasion. Daniel remained standing at attention. I understand, sir. I take full responsibility for my actions. Stone's expression shifted slightly. At ease, Captain. Sit down, all of you. He waited until Daniel and his crew had taken seats before continuing. You're not here to be court-martialed. You're here because you've fundamentally changed humanity's position in the galaxy. A woman to Stone's left leaned forward. She wore the insignia of the Intelligence Division. I'm Director Helen Crawford. Captain, your encounter with the Krethians has given us more actionable intelligence than 10 years of covert operations. But more importantly, it's changed how other species view us. Daniel frowned. Changed how, exactly? Crawford activated a holographic display. Multiple alien species appeared, their files annotated with diplomatic status and threat assessments. Before your encounter, humanity was classified by most spacefaring powers as a potential threat category designation level 2. Spacefaring but primitive, possessing basic technology but no real capability to project power. We were monitored but not particularly respected. The display shifted, showing updated classifications. As of 3 days ago, 6 major powers have reclassified us as Category 6. High threat potential, unpredictable tactics, asymmetric warfare capability. Captain, you've made humanity dangerous in their eyes, not through conquest or aggression, but through sheer unpredictability. Admiral Stone nodded. The Krethian Dominion sent an official communication 2 weeks ago. They've agreed to recognize human territory claims in exchange for assurances that we won't deploy singularity weapons near their core systems. They're also offering a formal non-aggression pact. Daniel blinked in surprise. They're backing down. Stone allowed himself a slight smile. Not backing down. Reassessing. The Krethians are warriors, Captain. They respect strength, even if that strength comes in unexpected forms. You demonstrated that humanity won't be bullied, and you did it in a way that left no room for doubt. That damaged flagship is still being towed back to their territory. Every species within 100 light years has seen the images. Another officer spoke up, this one wearing the insignia of the Strategic Planning Division. We've received inquiries from 14 different species about the nature of the Nova Lance. 7 have requested diplomatic meetings specifically to discuss military technology exchanges. 3 have offered defensive alliances. The galactic landscape has shifted, and we're no longer on the periphery. Daniel processed this information slowly. So we're not going to war. Crawford shook her head. War is always possible, but it's significantly less likely now than it was before your encounter. The Krethians understand that attacking humanity would be costly, even if they could ultimately win. And other powers are watching to see how we handle this new status. We're walking a diplomatic tightrope. Admiral Stone leaned back in his chair. Captain Hayes, I'm not going to pretend you didn't violate protocol. The Nova Lance was meant as a deterrent, not a first-strike weapon. But you were in an impossible situation, facing an enemy who had already decided to kill you. You made the only choice that gave you and your crew a chance to survive. He paused, his gaze sweeping across Daniel and his crew. And in doing so, you've bought humanity something we desperately needed. Time, respect, a seat at the table. The galaxy knows now that we're not to be dismissed or mocked. That's worth more than any number of conventional warships. Daniel felt some of the tension drain from his shoulders. What happens now, sir? Stone smiled properly now. Now we take advantage of the opportunity you've given us. Diplomatic initiatives are already underway. We're accelerating our shipbuilding programs and retrofitting the fleet with enhanced defensive systems. And we're developing new versions of the Nova Lance that can be deployed more safely and efficiently. He stood, and everyone else in the room followed suit. As for you and your crew, you're being reassigned. The Wanderer is being decommissioned and sent to a museum. You've earned a proper ship, Captain, something that matches the reputation you've built for humanity. Daniel glanced at his crew. Karen looked stunned. Paul was grinning like a fool. Lisa seemed to be calculating something in her head, probably already planning research projects for whatever new ship they were getting. Thank you, sir, Daniel said simply. Stone extended his hand, and Daniel shook it firmly. Don't thank me yet. You're about to become one of the most visible officers in the fleet. Every species in the galaxy is going to want to know about the captain who faced down a Krethian fleet and won. It's going to be exhausting." Daniel couldn't help but smile. "With respect, sir, after being mocked by aliens and threatening to blow a hole in spacetime, I think I can handle a few diplomatic receptions." The room erupted in laughter, and for the first time since the encounter with the Krethians, Daniel felt like everything might actually be okay. Humanity had crossed a threshold. They were no longer the new kids struggling to survive in a dangerous galaxy. They were players, with the respect and fear that came with it. As the debriefing concluded and Daniel and his crew were led to their new quarters, he couldn't help but reflect on how quickly everything had changed. One encounter, one desperate gamble, one weapon that defied conventional warfare, and suddenly humanity had gone from being mocked to being taken seriously. But Daniel also understood that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with powers that had been around for thousands of years. Humanity had proven they couldn't be easily dismissed, but they still had so much to learn, so far to go. The road ahead would be challenging. There would be more encounters, more tests, more moments where humanity's survival would hang in the balance. But they had proven something important, something that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Size didn't determine strength. Age didn't guarantee wisdom. And underestimating humanity was a mistake that would cost dearly. The Wanderer might have been small, outdated, and outmatched. But in the hands of a crew willing to fight for their survival and a captain who refused to surrender, even the smallest ship could decide everything. And the galaxy would never forget that lesson.